All right, urbanization. We're going to cover a lot of the units today. We're going to talk a little bit about sustainability too, but there's a separate lecture for that. But we're going to hit 5, 10, and 12, and 13. Anyways, here we go. It's going to be good. So remember, our key thing to know, when humans use resources, they alter natural systems. Do you think we're altering some natural systems in this picture? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the word urbanizing means we're moving from a rural setting to an urban setting. So from the country into the city. And over time, there's been a distinct change. We used to be mostly rural in the 50s, and now we are mostly urban. Well, that's a little, we're starting to switch. The predicted track line here. So because of that, some consequences are happening. Why do people move? Well, if there's not enough food or work, people come to the city. Because we have modified how we do agriculture, we don't need as many people. Most education is in the city. So if you want to become educated, you have to move to a urban setting. A lot of times there's political instability out in rural areas, especially in other countries, and so people come to cities for the stability. You get better pay in the city versus the countryside. You get better housing, better living conditions. So there's a lot of reasons people want to come be urban and not stay rural. So over time, you can see these graphics we have flipped, and it is predicted that most people will be living in city versus countryside in the near future. Some people are starting to go back though. Okay, so this urban bubble. People that are in rural areas have a connection to the land. They commune with nature. They feel a connection to nature. They respect nature. People that are living in the city don't have it. They don't experience it. They don't know what to do about it. They don't care about it because they're not involved with it. Some people have still never been to the ocean or the forest. Some of you may have never been to an ocean and forest. It is my hope and dream you will at least one time during this course of the class go to the ocean or the forest or commune with nature in some way. But because of this, we don't really know about biodiversity. So when things come up for voting to save environments and habitats, people don't vote for it because they just don't get it. So this is a very serious problem. These uninformed voters aren't understanding what they are and are not voting for. And so this can happen. This is in Corona. And this used to be hillsides and greenery and sagebrush, chaparral scrub habitat, and now it's all urban. Okay, so what happens when we urbanize? Well, poverty actually increases. There's more people in an area wanting the money and food and shelter, and it's not there. There's only so many people that they can house and employ and all of that. So we get these slums. And in the slums, there's a lack of sanitation. So we have this increase in disease and sickness. And we've got a lot of illiteracy. People can't come to school because they're poor, so they need to work and they don't go to school. And then we have uneducated public. And hopefully we learned in Unit 3, when there's a lack of education, there's a lack of prosperity. And then there's unemployment, and then there's higher crimes. And we have a whole bunch of economic implications because of urbanization. Environmentally, we have a few other things that happen. We get this thing called a heat island, which you probably could just guess what that means, but we'll talk about it in a second. There's definitely increased pollution in a city. Look at this picture. It affects the carbon cycle, and there's this thing called urban runoff. So we're going to talk about those things as well. Um, Ecosystem services. So remember what those are. We keep coming back to those things that the land and the habitat does for us and provides for us. And in urban settings, it is less effective. So we've got some feedback loops going on. And so we are looking at how we have more green infrastructure and we have increasing more green infrastructure, but we're decreasing the urban renewal. We're expanding the construction of land, we're abandoning cropland. So we've got some feedback loops that we don't really like going on here. So this heat island is an idea that in the middle of town, it's way warmer than on the outskirts of town or even into the rural areas. And you can look at this graph and you can see downtown, it's much warmer temperature than compared out to the countryside. Why would that be? Well, there's a little thing called albedo we've spoken about before. So think of what color the streets are. They're all dark, and dark absorbs energy, absorbs infrared radiation, so it heats up the pavement. And we're all close together in these buildings, and that also increases the heat of the city. So the city is warmer compared to like the outskirts, the parks, the suburban areas, and even the rural farmland. So it causes a microclimate, a little mini climate within the area that is different from the normal climate of the whole area. And because there's not as many trees and vegetation downtown, we get higher temperatures. So cities grow and some cities connect to other cities. Think of Anaheim. What cities? We don't go Anaheim and then a whole bunch of countryside and then to Fullerton. It's all kind of merged together. And so we get a bunch of air pollution and this mix of temperatures, and temperatures rise. So that's what a heat island is. What's the solution? We could plant more trees in our cities. Trees have a cooling effect. They produce shade. They absorb oxygen, or sorry, they absorb carbon dioxide. They absorb water. They evapotranspirate, and moist air is cooler than dry air. And so they do a whole bunch of services for us to combat this heat island effect. And they'll also filter in the air pollutants too. So trees can be a really great way to combat these heat islands happening in cities. Another neat thing that's happening now is because of that albedo, remember the lighter the color, the more heat reflects, it doesn't get absorbed. So people in certain cities are starting to color their rooftops lighter colors. So a light rooftop will reflect up to 80% of the heat causing infrared light from the sun, whereas a warm roof actually absorbs 80% or only reflects 20%. So that's a big difference. And a lot of countries, Japan, have really been doing this for a while, and they've actually seen quite a significant difference. So a lot of other cities are starting to do it. Another cool solution is green roofs. So instead of just coloring or painting the rooftops white or off-white, you could actually plant greenery up there. And so green roofs have a very interesting benefit. You could have a food source on the roof of your building. You also can lessen the cost to heat and cool your building because the soil acts as a natural insulator. Pretty neat. When it rains, instead of having the runoff just go down the drain pipe and down the street and off into the ocean, you can capture it and grow your green roof. It does help reduce that heat island effect because this has a cooling effect as opposed to this side where it's a warming effect. It helps with air quality because plants will cycle in the pollutants and absorb them. We don't have as many greenhouse emissions, and the roof actually lasts longer, so you don't have to replace the rooftops as often, so it saves money. Awesome. Go build a green roof on yours today. Ask parents first for permission. Okay. Another thing we've talked about in our previous videos is this salt water intrusion. When we have more people, more urbanization, we need more water. We take out more water from our aquifers. And remember, there's this equalization of pressure here. And if we take out too much, we can get salt water intrusion, which we don't want because then the fresh water gets contaminated with seawater. So do not overuse our aquifer because otherwise we will have salt water, which will kill you. Okay. This video you're going to watch and tell me what would happen if that was to happen, if the saltwater intrusion happened in Anaheim. So watch the little animation of that and think what happens. All right, carbon cycle and urbanization. So obviously more people, we're driving more vehicles, we're burning fossil fuels in our urban setting with our heating, our air conditioning, our electricity. Sometimes we forget most of our electricity still comes from burning fossil fuels. So every time we plug in, we're adding to that carbon cycle problem. Landfills are filling up with all of our waste. Our waste that's food waste can decompose and become methane, which is a powerful greenhouse gas. California actually has a new law coming this year about composting. And we're going to get more information this spring about what the city wants us to do and how we're supposed to handle our food wastes. So that's actually, it sounds like a pain, but it's going to be a good thing for the environment. Less methane in the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas. All right, another big thing in cities is the runoff. It rains, it just rained recently a lot here, and all that water we could have saved for our drought ran off into the ocean. We didn't even capture most of it. We captured a little bit of it, but most of it went to the ocean. If it is because our surfaces are impervious. All of our pavement, think of a city, it is concrete and asphalt, and nothing soaks in to our groundwater system. It just runs on down to the gutters and the drains and the ocean. What if we had stuff that absorbed all this water? What if we could let it soak in? So natural ground cover, just like cover crops, if we had plants and parks and gardens, more would go into our aquifer system, our groundwater. If we have all of this going on an impervious surface, it floods, it evaporates, and it runs off, and not very much gets into our long-term storage for water. So what's the solution? Permeable pavement. And you can look this up on YouTube. It's really cool. This is concrete that's porous, and it just, the water just goes right into the groundwater. It's amazing. Okay, so pavement can affect a heat island, and it can affect the groundwater recharge rate. So remember, we're taking water out for irrigation and for us to drink, and all the reasons we take out fresh water and need fresh water. Permeable pavement can help with that, and it can help with the heat island effect, and we can change our albedo levels with the color of our roofs, or if we have a green roof. So there's a lot of solutions. We just have to want them, be aware of them, and be able to pay for them. All right, I enjoy this quote. So the change in population distribution from high density areas to lower density areas that are suburbs and start to spread to rural lands leads to environmental problems. And you can see on this picture, we're just spreading into the environmental areas, into this biome that wasn't supposed to be inhabited by people. So here's our quote. Will urban sprawl spread so far that most people lose all touch with nature? Will the day come when the only bird a typical American child ever sees is a canary in a pet shop window? When the only wild animal he knows is a rat, glimpsed on a night drive through some city slum? When the only tree he touches is a cleverly fabricated plastic evergreen that shades his gifts on Christmas morning? To me, that's a sad synopsis of what's going on, but we can fix it. It's still fixable. So we need to be more focused and think sustainably. Okay, so what is urban sprawl? Well, urban is the city life, and sprawl means to kind of spread out. So the definition of urban sprawl is this uncontrolled expansion of urban areas. We're giving up cropland, we're fragmenting forests, we're losing our grasslands, our wetlands to build for human population. We are increasing our water pollution and our water use. We're increasing water's runoff. We are increasing our demand for energy, which is still burning fossil fuels mostly for electricity. the downtowns are starting to decline. So when more and more people move to downtown, it gets more crime, and then the rich will move out, and then it leaves for some poverty-stricken areas. We see more unemployment. Um, we see less of our neighbors. We're less social. COVID was kind of like that too, right? But even before COVID, we don't go outside. We don't socialize as much as we used to. We are very much stuck to our computers and socialize that way. All right. So why do we sprawl out? What is this urban sprawl? Well, it's less expensive. It's way cheaper to live out in Murrieta than Anaheim. So people move further away because it's cheaper. And the further away you move, the better house and the bigger the house you can have. So you have a bigger standard of living. Your money goes further. There's not a lot of planning going on, so people are just expanding and not really evaluating what they're doing by building out in certain places. A lot of people want a bigger backyard. And we have too many people, so we have to expand somewhere. So there's a lot of reasons for it. All right, so this mega city. A mega city is a population that has a city with a population over 10 million people. We have some near us, right? There's more and more all the time. So these mega cities are starting to exhibit all these problems that we've been seeing previously on our slide here. All right, we have heard of an ecological footprint, I hope. I hope you get on the internet and take a footprint test. Footprint test. Take one. And see how many earths you're using up. But an ecological footprint definition is the impact that human activities have in terms of biologically productive land and water that are needed to produce the goods and services you consume. So is your life so extravagant that you are taking up 1 Earth, 2 Earths, 3 Earths? The most I've ever had is 5.6 from a student. I hope you're not there. But be honest and see where you are, and then do something to change it. All right. So hopefully you learned a little bit more about being sustainable, be a little more thoughtful in what you're consuming, what you're doing, and what you can do to help prevent all this waste.